Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if you can all see the photo on the screen. The photo on the screen is Natalia Estemirova and her daughter Lana. It was taken, I think it was taken in 2009, possibly in 2008. At least in 2009, Natalia Estemirova was murdered. She was a human rights defender from Memorial, working in Chechnya, documenting war crimes and grave crimes against humanity, and which was taking place during the Second Chechen War. This year, Memorial won the Nobel Peace Prize, and her daughter, Lana, who's now a grown-up and a wonderful human rights defender in herself, she came to visit last week. We are here to show you a tool that the Norwegian Helsinki Committee is using for collecting and safeguarding and analyzing documentation of all sorts, testimonies, documents, newspapers, films, sound bites, all of it. We have now, from the Second Chechen War, collected more than 1 million documents. The tool is based on IDOC, which is a legal tool that was developed for the International Criminal Court. And now it has been redesigned for the use of human rights defenders. And it's based on a system called Case Matrix. I have with me here today Aage Borchgrevink, who's head of our documentation and accountability hub, and he will give you a proper presentation of the tool. Enjoy.
Yes. So storytellers and lawyers and others pay attention. Maybe you could switch the slides, Pauline. Right. I will be quite brief and try to be concrete. The idea here is just to tell about our documentation work, and specifically this tool that Berit mentioned. Why? Well, it's an interesting story in itself, but there are so many interesting stories here. We believe that maybe this can be useful in other situations than where the tool is currently used, which is in Europe, starting with North Caucasus. It's also now used widely in Ukraine, and is going to be used also in Belarus. The story we started with was the killing of Natalia Estemirova, our colleague from Memorial. And basically it taught us two things: that neither people nor archives are safe in the Russian Federation. So together with a number of partners, we will come to the list later, but they include of course Memorial, but also Human Rights Watch and some others. We made a plan to digitalize their vast archive of materials. Yes, thank you. You read my mind, actually. It is very... and to send all this for safe storage abroad, and we are handling it in Oslo, Norway, this vast archive. And of course, as normal is in such situations, there are two main goals, and those are truth and justice. So one thing is that we want to keep these materials safe. These are the actual records of what happened during the internal armed conflict in Chechnya and the neighboring regions, and what happened afterwards in the kind of human rights disaster area that developed afterwards. So it is a tool that's going to be an antidote to the messing with memory that is, a regular feature. Secondly, accountability. So maybe you can go on. Well, there are the partners that was part of creating our Natalia Estemirova Documentation Center. One further. And well, we also passed a resolution in 2010, which was the start point of the whole thing, and onward. Yeah, so here are some of the numbers of who contributed to the archive. But I would like to say that accountability is the second goal of the center. I will come to it in more detail, but the basic thing is that we are using then a tool called the IDOC, which is the template of a database, and which springs from the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and its legal tools programs that were, so it was developed like in embryo 15 years ago, but since this time, since 2010, we have developed it, and it has been used also not only for us, but also in other situations. Venezuela is one of them right now. And we believe it is a really useful tool, and I will not go so far into the details, but the thing is that it functions like the mind of a criminal investigator. Yes, I think we can pass on this. I already said this, that we have the transitional justice normally goals. And this is about the IDOC then, the database template. So basically it can catalog an enormous lot of information, but it has a matrix capacity that you can analyze this information up against international criminal law standards. So that's why it was chosen by our partners in Ukraine now. It's a Ukrainian NGO called Truth Hounds that we cooperate closely with. And since it's in the afternoon, I will not go in so much detail here either. But this is a couple of, just screenshots where you see the different layers of the individual documents, how they are grouped into clusters. That means basically incidents, and different ways that you can analyze and use them and gauge them basically according to criminal law when you want to qualify a crime. And you can also link incidents and perpetrators in this, and it's searchable in a number of different ways. So one thing is for the criminal justice part, that you can search for perpetrators, units, and so on. Another one is that if you want to make human rights reports, you can have more kind of victim-based or incident type-based searches and create reports and statistics and so on. So yes, now it's going pretty fast. Now we are over to the other part of the database, or a use of the database, which is more to do with the memory part of it. We have an open web page which is accessible to everybody, and the basic idea is that especially for the Chechen community in Chechnya, in Russia, and abroad, there's a huge diaspora in Europe, for instance. They can basically look at the places, their villages, their families, people they know, and they can search to get accurate information through our website. So there are searchable maps and catalogs of incidents, and you can also maybe use them for schools or in universities for making statistics. And we also have a number of publications coming up here, people working to create special reports, and there are also a number of articles, so it's updated pretty frequently. And a number of content from the victims themselves, basically their own stories of what happened when they were victimized. Yeah, just go ahead. So on the accountability side, just continue further. These are some of the, this is how you can see how the tool and the databases can be different. So the North Caucasus version the Natalia Estimira Documentation Center, it has an enormous amount of materials. But of those, the analyzed documents and materials, they are only now at around 40, plus 40,000. So it means that you all the time have a need to analyze and look for what are the useful documents and what are not so relevant. Whereas the Ukraine database, it's much more focused on criminal investigations. So in that case, you have a lot fewer materials, relatively, and as compared to the victims, of course, and also the identified suspects and so on. So, of course, it's our hope that this will somehow be used in a court of law, either in Ukraine, even better in Russia, or in some other kind of international mechanism. But apart from that, it has a very strong truth perspective in the long run, of course. But we also see that truth hounds, our partner, are so also sought after from international media. So I think that they have an advocacy and information and truth capacity or factor that goes beyond the long term, and so it's just important that you get the human rights angle on things, and they are really successful in doing so. Right. Yes, a number of the work we do for accountability is by its nature very sensitive, and we cannot really talk too much about it. But one thing is the work in the investigation, criminal investigations. Another thing is working with the sanctions mechanisms. So this is just a few names and or numbers and figures from our work with sanctions. So please go ahead. Yes, and of course we also cooperate with a number of European police, national police departments and prosecutors. And yes, there are also, this is for our Belarus work, but we work with different sanctions lists. Then you can go ahead. Just one example of one of major incident from the Second Chechen War, from a period of, or maybe a little bit later than the military phase, I would say, but there were these great sweep operations that were accompanied by a wide range of very serious violations. And in this one, we have made a huge study based on our own documents and gotten new materials forward. So we will submit this, and there are more than 50 suspects in this situation alone, to the relevant prosecutorial authorities that we believe can have an effect on the case. Okay, next one. I will skip this, but we also were involved in investigating Syrian cases based on the Syrian refugees that came to Norway. A number of them were, they were actually witnesses, or victims and witnesses to crimes mostly. Yes, now I will show you something which will blow your mind. Next. Yeah. Did your minds blow? Well. Anyway, this is just an example of how you can do the linkages within the tool, and this is an organizational map of Russian Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Defense forces. And when you see this, you can understand why they have problems in Ukraine, probably because it's incredibly complicated. But anyway, this is what you can use the tool for. So. And yeah, so with this kind of information, we are also supporting a number of cases in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And yes, you can go to the next. So these are, well, it's the Truth Hound, or the old, I would say, Truth Hound's webpage. But they are using the IDOC now very actively, and I've already explained, and you saw the figures basically for their own database on Ukraine, and you can go ahead. We also work with the Ukrainian government, actually. It's very rare, but we helped to install the IDOC with the Crimean prosecutor in exile. And we'll continue working in capacity building with the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office. Yes, just go ahead. It's just one example from torture, or a guy implicated in torture from a Crimean prison. He was also submitted on the sanctions list, and there is a big case file on him. You can go ahead. And lastly, we also want to go further, and since we have started in the area of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus comes maybe easier, because we need to tailor-make the database, the IDOC, to the relevant laws and the geographies and other things. But we are working then to establish an IDOC database also for Belarus. So far, we are basically training investigators. That's where we are. Yes, that was actually it, I think. So thank you for the attention. I think I wasn't too long, and I think that was just as well, because we just wanted to say, we have this tool. Are you interested? Talk to us. Berit and me from the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. So thank you.
With standards and can really be used effectively for accountability.
That's a great question, and you touch upon what is more difficult. There are a number of different tools like this, actually. And behind some, there are also quite big economic interests, and behind others, there are political power. So, so one of the unpleasant things is that it's often kind of like a fight for, getting the attention. I would say that with this, it comes from the ICC. It has the focus on international criminal law in its kind of core. And it is also flexible enough to be updated and to be implemented in very different situations and under different legal frameworks. So that is why we really believe in this, and we have seen it, worked with it for a long time, and seen that it is flexible. If it wasn't, we couldn't really take it from 2010 in Chechnya to 2022 in Ukraine. A number of the other solutions are simpler. What you were talking about is like a case management system that is used by, various big law firms and so on, like Case Fleet, or there are several. They are a little bit less complex, I would say, and maybe easier to use. We still believe that this is better if you want to have high quality and the evidentiary standard needed for criminal, not only investigations but prosecutions. So that's the main difference.
And I can add to that. I mean, this is not a fast-track documentation system. We have to be clear about that. It's quite work-intensive, because you need to, every single piece of evidence you have to analyze it very thoroughly and go through and register all the elements that might be relevant for building a case. But the system allows you to ask yourself all the important questions. That's why it helps you to build a case and make sure that you have the elements necessary to build an international criminal case, following the same system and standards that is used by International Criminal Court.
Any other questions?
Maybe I can tell you just a little bit of how we work with domestic civil society, because it is a very important element of the whole thing. And that is, it started with local NGOs and spearheaded by Memorial in Russia, who had this enormous amount of documentation, and they were afraid of losing it, and weren't quite sure how to use it. We were already working with them on this kind of documentation, and the tool was, we adapted the tool because we already had a cooperation with Case Matrix and ICC on documentation. So we agreed that the basis of this system would always be the documentations collected on the ground by civil society. And so it is, we're sort of a middle, we are in the middle between the local civil society, where we assist them in setting up the system. We provide translations, adaptation of domestic legislation, and also work with them on a daily basis. And we make sure to fundraise and to provide analysts. So we have.
It's basically about capacity building. You know,
Yes.
they will take over and take it further, like the Ukrainians have done with their database now, and which is also useful to us for the next.
Yeah. And then when the documentation is analyzed, gathered and analyzed, we help in looking for path for pursuing for criminal cases, for universal jurisdiction, for sanctions cases. So we involve in that as well. And together with, for instance, FIDH.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.